start recording, so we are good there. Hello, thank you for joining me.
Hello. No,
um,
thank you for having me.
Very well, very well. So let's start with the basics. So how do we call you, and what do you do, like in general terms?
Yeah, so I have a few accounts online as PizzaTorque. I make some videos and streaming. So I started basically just with streaming Emacs stuff and Python stuff and Golang stuff as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you can also call me Andrew. That's my name. But I mean, online the persona is PizzaTorque. Let's see,
Okay,
and
that's what we
that's
will go with.
yeah, yeah.
And you have, you said, several online accounts. I imagine they are all related to the same themes, or it's just
Yeah,
the same persona but different projects.
no. It's all the same. So it's all related to the streams that I started doing. I think a couple of years ago, or maybe slightly less than that, I started streaming Emacs stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and it all started actually because I watched other streamers and I watched how people would go to their streams, and then it would become kind of a social event of writing some code or changing configurations, and I
Mm-hmm.
like that quite a lot. And
Mm-hmm.
in some instances, it has worked quite well. So
Uh-huh.
I really got to say that there's something nice in doing that. Although
Mm-hmm.
you put yourself online, and so you're more self-conscious of everything you do. You know, like you forget how to type all of a sudden.
Yeah, of course. So tell me about those streams. So what is the average stream like? Like, what do you actually do there?
So to be honest, most of the streams I only had very vague general themes in mind, and
Mm-hmm.
then I would explore. Because at the very beginning, I tried doing like more structured stuff,
Mm.
but I didn't feel like it felt more like a job than something I was enjoying, right? And so in the end, I ended up doing just what I do, which is streaming something. I have an idea. I want to try to implement something in Emacs or whatever, or code something in Python. And even if I get stuck for half an hour on something that may be silly, I just go ahead with it because I don't want to feel like this is a job, right? I just want to feel
Correct.
like I can do whatever I want, right?
Yeah, yeah, correct. And I think that's the nice thing about the live stream in tandem with the community component that you mentioned. Because when
Mhm.
you make it real like this, I think that also draws in the community. Because it
Yeah,
feels like how we would all experience it. Like in our real world, we don't experience perfection, edited and filtered and
yeah,
tweaked. It's
yeah,
exactly
yeah.
this.
Yeah, and there were a couple of streams where some contributors like Alpha Papa and others passed by to give their opinions or help me because I was stuck. And I
Uh-huh.
gotta say, that was the coolest thing. Like that's the coolest thing, that you have like people coming in and you learn something from them, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And yeah, I think that's the component, and also the social one. I'm usually kind of outgoing, so it's fun talking to people and
Hmm.
stuff like that.
Just to say that Alpha Papa, for anybody who doesn't know, is a prolific contributor to Emacs, the Emacs packaging ecosystem. The real name is Adam Porter, and it's Alpha Papa on GitHub. Yeah, like basically, if you have thought of an Emacs package, Alpha Papa thought of it first, and already has like 3 different variations of it.
Yeah, it's like The Simpsons.
Exactly, exactly. So tell me a little bit about your Emacs and how do you use it in general?
So I work in data science, and before data science, I also worked in general software development, and so I use it mainly for that. But actually, I started with Emacs just for note taking and writing LaTeX files.
Uh-huh.
So because I was studying my master for my Master of Arts in linguistics, and at the same time I was getting interested in Linux and all those things because I was doing some of the research stuff. I was falling into open source and all that kind of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and so one thing led to another. I ended up trying Emacs for LaTeX, and um, if I think of how I was using it at the time, I will just think, oh man, I was such a noob. Like I cringed a little bit thinking of how I was using it. But at the same time, I really like the idea that I can make this system however I want it to be, and I can try out all the other tools that it has.
Uh-huh.
So I was using it for that mainly, writing papers and stuff like that. And then
Mm-hmm.
I started using it for programming, and then I left it because when I started working full time in software development, I found that everyone around me was using either PyCharm or VS Code, and
Okay.
I felt like, at least I was kind of lagging behind in a
Mm.
certain sense.
Mm-hmm.
um, but then a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, I jumped back. I said, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to use Emacs. I don't
Mm-hmm.
care. I'll make it work. And so I've been using it just for software development mainly ever since. I
Mm-hmm.
used to use a lot of the other tools. There was a Reddit client, for example, that I was using back in the day.
Okay.
Also for emails, I was using, I think it um, was something not much. Is that possible, or is that for terminal use? I think.
Not much is definitely in Emacs as well. Actually, if
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah,
install the not much binary, you get a not much.el for free. Like it's part
yeah.
of the, like they
It,
develop it
it,
together. Yeah.
I'm talking a few years ago. So and I was trying to do all this stuff, but now I have a more minimalist, let's say, kind of approach. So I want to use it just for software development and maybe note taking a little bit
Okay.
with org mode,
Hmm.
and that's it. Because I also used to do like the org roam thing with all the nodes everywhere, and I can browse them. But now I'm trying to have a narrower scope. Let's say.
Okay, I have two questions there. One is related to Emacs for development, but before I go into that, I want to go to the beginning when you first switched to Emacs, which was for note taking and LaTeX and all that. At the time, did you know that Emacs is this programmable, extensible program and basically it can do everything? Or was it just, you know what, this is a good note taking app and that's just all there is to it?
No, actually, I had a friend he is a great software developer, and
Hmm.
he is very much into Vim. So I
Uh-huh.
knew about Vim, and so he said, "Why don't you try it?" Etc. Etc. And I was googling Vim, uh, and I ended up on a video from from a channel, a very old video from 10 years ago, that was called Evil Mode, and how I learned to love Emacs or something like that.
Uh-huh.
So it's a very old video from a web developer that showed how he set up everything for his environment 10 years ago in Emacs. And I thought, oh man, that looks so much better than the Vim my friend is trying to sell me. So and then that same channel, which I have no idea what it was about. It was like a from a company or something like that, but they had these open source talks. Also had another Emacs org
Mm.
mode video.
Mhm.
Oh man, I can take notes with this. I can connect stuff. I can execute pieces of code. This is awesome. Um, but
Yeah.
um, but I understood some of it, of the extensibility, but not how deep it went. Also because
Mhm.
I don't come from a computer science background, so some of the things I had to catch up later.
Mhm.
So I had an idea. I could understand. I can make a lot of stuff with this. Like if I don't like something, I can change it, even the smallest things.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Uh-huh.
And so I had kind of a grasp, and I gotta say, maybe even now, I don't understand fully how much I can influence the whole system,
Hmm.
right? Um, but yeah, that was the thing that drew me in.
Okay.
Uh, so yeah, I had kind of an idea, but not
Yeah,
such.
yeah. About those videos, I suspect that it's those events that were taking place in New York, and there was one. I remember the presenter, the speaker, Jay Dixit, was a journalist who was doing about org mode and stuff. But I will have to check because maybe I'm wrong on that. But anyway, um, yeah, okay. So basically, you understood that there is this extensibility. You don't know how far it goes. Uh, Fast forward, you start programming professionally, you switch to the other editors, and then you switch back to Emacs. How did you find that transition, and how does Emacs measure up to the competition, let's say, to the
Um,
proprietary stuff?
yeah, so the I think it's somewhat maybe language specific because I've always worked mainly with Python,
Okay.
and the dependency environment that you set up in your projects can be different, very different project to project.
Uh-huh.
There are still so many tools for dependency management, and all of that is a little bit of a nightmare. And so I always found that um, the weak point of Emacs was having a way to easily manage that in the same way as PyCharm, for example, or even VS Code do. Um, because with them, you often sometimes you don't really have to do anything. You just have to press a button, and your whole environment is set up, and there's no confusion about that. But
Okay.
at least in my experience, there's more boilerplate work that you have um, that you have to do with Emacs. Um,
Mm.
and so I got kind of in a mindset that that's too much work. But then I started working on a project um, um, in Golang, and I
Okay.
saw that out of the box everything was working in Emacs just for trying. I said, let me try this since this is a new project. It's in Golang. I will try with Emacs how it goes,
Okay.
and it was awesome, really. Like out of the box, I didn't have to do much except install a couple of packages and 2 lines of configuration. Everything was working. And so I worked quite a bit in that. So then I got into the mindset of, okay, I will try to have a generic way to make it work. And I wrote myself some code as well, that the Emacs Lisp code to help me set up things how I like them set up. And then also some of the new tools that are coming out in Python are solving that problem with
Ah.
UV, which is like a dependency management, project management thing for Python stuff. So that works really well, and it makes it very easy to set up your environment project. And so basically, I just decided, okay, I will try to use only Emacs since now there are better tools to manage projects, and let's see how it goes. And so far, it's been going pretty well. It's been going pretty
Oh,
well.
interesting. What about the amount of boilerplate? Has it been going down with the introduction of these new tools?
I think in part yes, and it's also the things that you have to do with generic like Python workflow itself. I can really just provide an executable to some of the commands, even the compile command, and I know that whatever I want to execute in my project will execute without having to worry, am I in the virtual environment? Is the virtual environment activated? Are the dependencies installed already? I don't have to worry about that at all. So it's been quite nice. It could also be that there were already some tools that could solve things like those, and I just didn't end up working with them, and so
Ah,
I don't even know about them. But for this one with UV is pretty cool. Everything works pretty nicely.
Hmm. What about the other developer-related niceties? Like developers are used to having their completions pop up where they are typing. They have all their linters set up and all the debugging and everything is ready to go. With Emacs, of course, you have to do part of that work yourself. But once you do it, how does it feel? And also, is it easy to do it, or you really need to know a lot about Emacs to eventually set up, let's say, a Python environment?
Um, so I think there's still quite a bit compared to the other environments, and sometimes there are pitfalls also in other ones, not just in
Mm,
Python, not just in Python projects, but also with the Golang project. I remember that one time there was some dependency mismatch, and
mm,
it was causing some issues in my local environment. And when I tried to open the project with VS Code, I don't know what it does in the back, but it figured it out. It said, "Hey, look, there's." I think it was one of the tools for linting that had a different version than the Go version that I was using, and it was, "Hey, look, there's a version mismatch here. Well, maybe you want to correct that." And so
mm,
that's something that in Emacs, for example, does not. You would have to probably write something yourself or find some tool to do that.
mm-hmm,
um, and the same is for Python. So if you want autocomplete and all that, yes, you have to configure it yourself, unless you want to use the built-in autocomplete, which is not exactly the same experience as the other editors. So
yeah. That's a very polite way of saying that it's not up to speed. Of course,
yeah,
there are people who like it, I understand, but I think
yeah,
that it's really alien. It looks like a throwback to like at least 2, 3 decades ago. Like if you go from VS Code style
yeah.
to Emacs defaults, you're like, okay, where am I?
Yeah, I think that um, the newer packages like Corfu are pretty good. They give you a pretty awesome experience, and
Mm-hmm.
also you don't have to configure much. Usually, I just copy the configuration from their documentations, and everything works great.
Mm-hmm.
So I think with these newer packages, things are moving in a very good way. Because if I think of how I was using Emacs at the beginning, and this is like 7 years ago or something like that, I was using Helm, and I remember, I don't know why, if I cannot go find the configuration that I was using back then, but if I think about it, I feel like there was so much more like stuff that I needed to configure, so much more stuff that I needed to make sure would work together. And
Mm-hmm.
instead, now everything is more like out of the box experience. Just install these packages, very small configuration, and everything should work out of the box. And it's
Mm-hmm.
probably because they're very much better integrated with the Emacs native stuff. So
Yeah, and part of that is because the Emacs native stuff actually developed. Like when
yeah,
Helm came around, and maybe Icicles before it, like if you have checked the Emacs wiki, basically they were the forerunners, they were the innovators, and they were introducing something completely new. And Emacs didn't have the requisite infrastructure, so of course they were inventing a lot of things. Long story short, Emacs core caught up, and now much of that is not needed, and so you can have these smaller packages, Vertigo and Consultant, Corfu, and Friends.
yeah, which are basically what I use every day. So
Yeah.
yeah, I feel the things have been moving quite nicely, and also the project Dorel, that's pretty awesome. That was a quality of life improvement that I don't even need to install anything for like project scope wide things, right?
Yeah.
So that was pretty nice. Probably one of the things that I enjoyed the most of the last years.
Yeah, and
So
that is basically the same story. Like Projectile before it was again the innovator, And then eventually Emacs caught up with
Yeah.
project.dl. Yeah, so that's really nice as well. What about LSP technology and the three-seater technology? I imagine you use some LSP client,
Yeah.
maybe Iglot,
Yeah.
maybe LSP mode, and
No,
three-seater?
I use Eglot. I'm trying to stay as minimal as possible. I used LSP mode for a while. The good thing of LSP mode is that it also had a debugger that would work nicely with
Mm,
it. And it had a very familiar, let's say, layout if you compare it to like VS Code. Uh, but I feel that with Eglot you can get all the stuff that you need. There are very minor things that you feel like you cannot do. For example, in Python, for example, if I in PyCharm, if I want to, I can rename a file a module, and all references of that module, so of that file name in the project, will be
mm,
updated. So it's like a function rename, right? But
okay.
on a file name level, let's say.
Mm-hmm,
And I
mm-hmm,
don't think that Eglot does that, but
mm-hmm,
Eglot does very well the all the rest. I want to rename functions. I want to see the source of a function, all the references of a function or a class, whatever, where everything works great. So I feel like I get like 90% of everything that I need from it.
okay. Very good, very good. What about this package called DAPE, D-A-P-E, which I
Yeah,
think
the
is basically
debugger.
the debugger for Iglot. Like maybe it's
Yeah,
not exactly that, but yeah, in practice.
I did a stream, I think a year ago or so, using setting up the ape and using it. It was quite nice, but I rarely use debuggers.
Okay.
So I think on most of my machines, I don't even have it in the configuration. So I was just trying it out because I mean, people were talking about it, and so I was curious. And it looks quite nice. It looks very more lightweight uh, than uh,
hmm
than the LSP one, LSP mode one. So yeah, but from what I remember, it was quite straightforward to set up, so it works. I remember that it has probably a much wider array of configuration of things regarding the project, executable, the threads
hmm
and stuff. But it's at least at the time it worked out of the box. It was quite nice. It was
Okay, okay, that's good. Yeah, because basically Iglot, the approach they have is like, well, you should not have to configure, let's say, not anything, but you shouldn't have to configure too many things, and maybe
yeah.
DAPE is following the same philosophy.
Yeah, I don't think
Mm.
I have many things configured in Eglot. I just have the executables mentioned configured, and that's it. I don't
hmm
think I have much else around Eglot.
hmm
Uh, yeah, and I think it's also it's also a nice thing that you have something like this that gives like modern. Um, Access to modern workflow already built in, right? Without having to go install and search on the web. How do I do this? Now it's basically built in. So I
hmm
think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, 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 exactly. And presumably you already have the language server program installed. So
Yeah,
yeah, you just need to start Emacs and basically it's almost ready to go. You just need to say, okay, how do I start the LSP client?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's
Good, good.
pretty cool.
What about the tree sitter? Do you use it? Have you played with it? Have you tried it?
I have everything configured for tree sitter, but I don't really use it as in. I know that there are some packages like Combobulate
Mm-hmm.
that work quite nicely with it, and I tried them. But I just know that I enable tree sitter in all of the programming mode stuff that I have it enabled, and
Okay.
then I guess that everything just integrates well because I mean I don't really configure anything other
Mm-hmm.
than that and Eglot. I can also probably just check that now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
at least in the one that I'm using in the last streams, in the configuration of the last streams, there's nothing three-seater related. I
Hmm.
just have the TS, so the mapping to Python mode, to Python
Hmm.
three-seater mode.
Hmm.
So everything gets mapped, and it's
Okay, okay, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, good, good, good. Because of course, in principle, three sitters should basically be transparent. It's like it powers things in the background, like syntax highlighting,
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
menu, and whatever, and you just do your work.
yeah. It's the best and only thing that the Atom editor left us. So Atom lives on just thanks to three-seater. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I see, I see. But for me, it's interesting how, of course, we can always take ideas from other projects, and
mhm.
eventually, it's just a matter of how motivated are we to incorporate them in Emacs,
Yeah.
or generally have an interface, yeah, that is more general, not specific to one editor.
Do you end up using eglot a lot?
So because me, I mostly program in Emacs Lisp, I don't. Like Emacs Lisp by default inside of Emacs has all the things you would need. So I don't need it. I have used it here and there for some small projects. It was nice, it worked, and I was like, okay, that's great. But I don't have experience with the bigger kind of requirements, which is like, hey, you need to do web development, and here is JavaScript with HTML embedded and CSS and all the gimmicks. And I'm like, yeah, I don't need to worry
Yeah.
about that. But there,
Yeah.
I imagine it will be more tricky. Now you have three language servers or some, I don't know, super language server, whatever. And yeah, I don't know how
Yeah.
that will work.
There is one of the issues that I'm seeing with some of the new language servers that are coming out, that they do only part of the work. So, for example, you have one that only works on the type hinting,
Hmm.
and if you want it to, so if you want to have all the features of usually, let's say, single big LSP, you need to have more than one at the same
Uh,
time.
mm,
And from what I understood, that is something that you cannot really do in eglot yet, but there's like works in trying to make it that work. So yeah, but for me, that at least for now, it does not affect me because I use like LSPs that are just one piece of software, and it
mm.
does all the type of checkings that you need, and autocomplete and all of that. So I don't need to have one LSP for type checking, one LSP for autocomplete. I just have one that does
Yeah,
everything.
yeah, yeah. Like from an end user perspective, I think it's more convenient. Like just give me one
Yeah,
that does everything and I don't need to bother
yeah,
with it.
yeah, yeah. Just like Emacs. So
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But now saying this, I remember like some time ago reading about this Harper server, LSP server, which is for pros. It's for spell checking and grammar
mm,
and all that, the pedantic points that it makes. And I was like, okay, so if you want that as well as your Python code or whatever, then basically you have an issue. So yeah, yeah, you would need to figure out how to do it. Of course, the solution is to let go of the grammar checking, and you just use.
yeah.
No need for pedantic comments. We are good. Which is, of course, now a good segue into your background because you mentioned your Masters of Arts and your background is in linguistics, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
So I studied. I come from a, so actually I come from a family of tech people
hmm.
because my father used to work at Olivetti. I don't know if you.
Oh, the typewriter, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. They also
Oh,
made computers back then, so
oh, very nice.
yeah, they were like head to head with IBM.
Oh,
So
beautiful.
I grew up with computers around in the 90s. But I also grew up in a kind of middle of nowhere place where, like, just to tell you, my schools didn't have libraries, so
Uh-huh, uh-huh,
you
uh-huh.
know, very little resources.
Uh-huh.
My school didn't even have a handlebar on the stairs. They just had the just the like the spikes coming out, but no handlebar on the stairs. So like
Good
uh,
luck.
a pretty bad hazard to have in a school.
Wow, wow. No, no, no.
Yeah, so growing up in this environment, it was kind of instilled into me that I was better doing something that was not computer related, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I ended up stumbling into languages, and also because it came easy to me because I grew up with with part of my family that speaks English, and so it a lot of the English accents and stuff, they were very easy. So
Ah.
it was pretty simple. But then studying languages, I started learning about linguistics and phonetics, and I was really into some of the computational side of it. So
Ah,
there's like all this branch of linguistics called corpus linguistics
okay.
that basically studies um, big corpora of books, encyclopedias, or even online content, whatever. And then they use some techniques and some stats to draw conclusions that are
Mm.
usually related to like either language change or social stuff or cultural stuff. But I was really more into the like parsing the thing and you know
Mm.
like the processing of it. So I stumbled into that and then into phonetics, which basically is the sound of the study of sounds. Um, from humans,
Mm-hmm.
and so related to language. And I liked that a lot because I got to like do lab stuff with like recordings and then having to use weird software to parse the audio. There's all sorts of stuff that you can do with human audio.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that led into programming, into Linux, and into all of that. And then from there, it just went on and on. I just started specializing more into statistics and programming rather
Mm-hmm.
than language.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And
Mm-hmm.
as a matter of fact, I haven't opened a linguistics book or anything in probably a decade. So
Ah, okay, okay, I
Uh,
see, I see.
but I was really into phonetics and the study of dialects and all of that. My master thesis was on local dialects and all of that. So
Mm-hmm.
I was really into that. Yeah.
Uh-huh. And are there some any kind of rules that could apply independent of the language family? Like, for example, dialects of French and dialects of Greek, let's say there is some rule that governs how a dialect will, I don't know, branch off. Like, I don't know. No. I really know nothing,
No,
so I'm just asking, like.
no. That's a pretty nice question. And for some of the changes in time with language, we can only make like educated assumptions and infer things. So if we talk about very old languages or proto languages. But if we talk about dialects, I think it's a little bit different. For some dialects, there's very little documentation.
Mm-hmm.
So they go basically, you really have to either collect the data yourself, right? Or you have to hope that in some library there's some
Mm-hmm.
old thesis from someone that already did some of the work.
Uh-huh.
In my case, I had to collect the data myself.
Wow.
And there are so linguistics gives you a framework to basically describe languages, right?
Mm.
So you get all this data in phonetics, for example, and you can map out what is the set of sounds that are used in this language or in this
Hmm.
dialect.
Mhm.
There's very uh, no difference between a dialect and a language, really. Usually, a dialect is a language as long as there's no intelligibility between two people. So the moment two people speak their own dialects and don't really understand each other, then you can safely assume it's two different languages. Like
Mhm.
you don't need a dictionary book that says so, right?
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Um, that's yeah, and that's the other difference in linguistics, where you have prescriptivism and descriptivism.
Uh-huh.
So almost everybody in school grows up with prescriptivism.
Which
You
is
go to
what?
school, so you go to school and they tell you this is how the language should be, right?
Ah, uh-huh.
So if you have any kind of variation because of the region area where you grow up in, it's usually taught to you that that's wrong. You should not say it like that, right? But descriptivism, it's really not about that. It's more about, okay, this is valid because people understand each other, and what we have to do is document this because languages change, they die. In Italy, especially, there was a pretty heavy like fight against dialects during the fascist regime, right?
Mhm.
And that has influenced all the generations after. Right? And
Mhm.
I guess it's the same in Greek, right? I guess you guys also have.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like in Greece, of course, the geography plays a role. Like in Greece, it's a mountainous country, really. Of course, it's known for its islands, but really, it's just a big chunk of rock. And what happens is different parts of the country are hard to communicate with each other. And so you would have, for example, the people in the northwestern part of Greece, where towards where Albania is, and those people would speak a dialect, they still do, a dialect that is very different, for example, from the people in Crete, the island of Crete. Or
Mhm.
people in Cyprus, the Greek speaking parts of Cyprus, with people in Corfu and so on, like different parts, like very, very different. But
And I
now
think
with
that,
TV and public schooling and all that, eventually there is a convergence towards
yeah,
the
exactly.
official, language.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I think that that's an interesting point, that because I think that Albania has quite a lot of vocabulary that's kind of taken from Greek,
Mm.
if I remember
This I
correctly.
don't know. This I don't know.
Mm,
But what I do know is that a lot of Albanian people have been in Greece, and Greek and
yeah,
Albanian histories are kind of intertwined,
intertwined.
going back centuries, like many many centuries. Of course,
Yeah,
the purists will tell you, no, 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 like it's very clear, but it's not.
yeah, and yeah, I think that's exactly the point. That you go to school and you are taught, no, this is not how you say it. This is not how you should phrase it, even because in Italy, for example, we have a wide array of dialects. We
Mhm.
have even syntax differences
Mm.
in some dialects that are quite big. So people from Sicily, they switch the order of subject, verb, and object in the
Oh.
sentences. Yeah, so some differences are quite noticeable if you compare someone from the speech of someone from Sicily to someone from Milan, for example, right? And so I always really liked that. I grew up with my grandparents that would speak dialect to me, so I'm really attached, right? I have fond memories of that,
Uh-huh.
and it's also kind of sad that you see like the newer generations, it gets diluted because of the education. I mean, the languages still change in time. You cannot change that. Like it's something that's going to happen, but when it happens because of like this is wrong, you shouldn't speak like that, it's a little bit different, but it also introduces nice social things, like you can, if you speak dialect, usually you're trying to be funny or you're very mad, right? So you add the social cues just by switching to dialect.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, of course, of course. Yeah, that's nice. That's the thing. Like, you cannot say that it's purely good or purely bad. Of course, there are pros and cons to everything. Like,
Mhm.
the homogenization of the dialects into a unified language, of course, allows people to move to different parts of the country and still be able to get things done. Like, imagine you move from one part of, I don't know, Italy or Greece to another, and you are basically a foreigner. Like, nobody can understand you. That would be very difficult. Like, you would be stuck in your village. But of
Yeah,
course, if you can communicate, then of course there is free movement and all that. But the downside is that you lose your living history, which is what
yeah.
language is, like that.
Yeah, and it's also a skill because
Uh-huh.
technically you grow up somewhat bilingual, and from the what I remember, usually if you grow up bilingual, you're also more apt to learn other languages. Like it's going to come easier to you. At least that's what I recall. I don't know if newer papers or research, like probably someone will yell in some comment section that this is not the case anymore. But this is what I recall, at least
Uh-huh.
from yeah, but yeah, I think it's kind of bittersweet, let's say. But it's also nice that we have all of this in Europe. Like a lot of countries in Europe have this going on with a lot of dialects and things like that. So
Yeah, yeah, of course, of course. Like, of course, in the European Union, there are, I don't know, 23, maybe I've lost count, official languages, but that's, of course, an undercounting of the languages, dialects, etc., that are spoken. And there are many people who are campaigning for, hey, you should recognize our language as well. So, for example, sorry, people in Corsica, the Catalans have their own thing going on, and Gaelic language. Of course, they are not in the EU anymore, but like, so basically, there are a lot of people who want their language to be recognized.
yeah, and it's probably a way to like because they feel like the threat of the language and the culture disappearing, right? And so they
Mm.
want in some way be assured that that's not going to happen, right? Like you used to speak to grandma in whatever in my dialect, for example. So will your grandchildren speak to you that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where most of it probably comes from. Because I don't know in the other countries, but in Italy there was quite a movement of, oh, don't speak dialect, we just speak Italian.
Mm-hmm.
And during the fascist regime, it was also no foreign words, like no English words, no French words, and stuff like that.
Me, I don't know enough about the history of language development in general, but I would suspect that there is kind of a correlation of the rise of the nation state. And you mentioned
Mhm.
fascism, of course, which is nationalism with
Yeah, exactly.
with specific components, but basically the rise of the nation state with the rising need for social mobility, like bringing people to the capital, to the factories, and so on. And maybe these things go together, like, and the need, okay, so we standardize
I think that
everything. And
I think that the problem is that so during the regime, it was really like if you do something wrong like that, like the consequences are cruel, right?
of course.
So people would just stay away from all the kind of risk, let's say. And you can also see it then in the literature and all of that. I think that the worst thing that came out of it was that for language regarding the languages, right, was that it instilled a culture of fear and shame in
Mm,
speaking whatever you were speaking. And
mm-hmm.
so because of that, that gets passed on through generations, right?
Uh-huh.
and
Mm-hmm.
and you still have that in the newer generations, because if you go to a job interview, you shouldn't speak dialect, right?
Yeah.
uh, right. But that's the culture of the stigma, the stigma that's left from back in the days, back then, right?
Hmm.
While back in the 19th century, speaking dialect was normal, and there were even debates on which dialect should be the official language of Italy, right?
Yes,
So it
yes,
was
yes.
all based on dialect, and obviously, if and in the end, it was the Florence dialect that
Hmm.
won in Italy. But the Sicilian dialect was also a candidate for it, right?
Uh-huh.
So if things had gone differently, like people would speak somewhat of a descendant of Sicilian dialect,
Hmm.
right? And the feeling of shame would be upside down, right? It would be,
Exactly.
oh, if you speak if you speak a dialect that's close to the Florence one, maybe people would feel ashamed of that. And that's
Hmm.
because, like, again, the stigma that during the regime gets instilled, and then or even during the unification of Italy, because Italy was a bunch of small states, right? Gets instilled and then passed down generation through generation.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
it's pretty, yeah, it's pretty sad that stuff like that happened, because then you have some foundations, etc., that you can find, for example, for the preservation of Inuit language,
Hmm.
right? That's something. There are some languages in Alaska, for example, that are spoken by a handful of people, and so it's close to be forever forgotten, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
you can think of all the many dialects of very secluded regions of Italy or wherever, even Greece, that probably are in the same risk, right, of dying
Mm.
off, and
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. When a language reaches a point where you can count the speakers, basically it's going to go extinct unless there is serious intervention. I mean, speaking of serious intervention, I was reading the other day that in Ireland, where they have been trying to introduce their native tongue, they are still basically failing. It's a very difficult task to make people speak Irish and make it kind of
Mhm.
the default language. Of course, there are some parts where it is spoken, but they still have a very long way to go. It's really difficult. So I imagine if you don't have a state behind it, and it's like a small group, like a foundation trying to preserve some language.
Yeah, I think it can have a pretty big effect on the frequency of the language being spoken, right? Because you have, let's say, grandparents that would only speak dialect.
Mm.
Then the grandparents, they speak the official language when, you know, out with strangers and official things. And then their children, they instead speak dialect only when mad or when they want to make a joke.
Uh-huh.
And then it becomes less and less frequent, right? And
Hmm.
so, yeah, like there are a lot of dialect words that my grandparents knew, and I obviously don't know them. I just,
Uh-huh.
um, and so those words are gone, right? So yeah, but this
Those
was
are just
no,
to
no,
say
go
just to say those are really fun when it's when you are angry, like swear words and stuff. It's really funny when, for example, you play football with somebody and you have this normal exchange, and then they will say some swear word and you're like, what?
ahead.
And everybody stops and is like, hey, forget about everything, we need to know what these words mean.
Yeah,
Yeah, sorry to
but
interrupt you. Yeah, back to
no,
what
no,
you were
no. This
saying.
was a nice walk down memory lane of all the linguistic stuff. So
Uh-huh,
the
uh-huh.
good times of like studying at university, all of this, and yeah,
Yeah, let's connect it to the present because now you
yeah.
do the computer languages and programming and all that. Do you think that your background in linguistics has informed your work right now? And do you think it helps? Or is it basically a
Yes.
waste of time and, you know?
No, no, I think it helps. I think it helps because you can. So some of the things that you learn in studying syntax, etc., and morphology, sometimes they are quite similar to some of the uh, computer science kind of things that you do. So creating abstractions, and from those abstractions trying to see the patterns, and putting everything together so that it works. And some are more down to earth, so having to work with processing audio files, and
Mhm.
all of that frequency, mapping values from frequencies to a plot. That's more practical. So I feel like it served me. And plus, I think you can learn to do a bunch of stuff in life, and even if it turns out not to be useful in in a way that's remunerative, right? It's going to be good. Like, you learned something, you should be glad of that, right? You should
Yeah,
you should
yeah,
not. Which is also what I feel like with Emacs a little bit. It's um, so I think that some people, the mindset of having the having to have everything ready immediately and ready to go, output input output immediately, it's what keeps a lot of people away, because the what is for them, let's say, a defect of Emacs. For someone like me, it's more like an upside, because I get to learn.
mm-hmm.
If I want to set up something, I have to learn something of the system, and I have to learn something of how it works. So it's kind of the system is teaching me basically, and I have to learn from the system how it works if I want my things to work, right?
Yep,
So,
yep.
and I noticed that usually when you learn to do that, if there are issues, something breaks, you already develop kind of a pathway of what to do to figure it out. Like, what,
Yep.
oh, maybe this broke because of that. And instead, if you're usually used to PyCharm or VS Code and those things that take care of all the heavy lifting for you, uh, I think you can get somewhat of atrophy of like, oh, this is not working. Like, it's saying some dependency error or whatever, and now I have to figure it out, and it's like a shock instead of, oh, it's just that, and I'll figure it out. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
so
Basically, you are helpless. You're like, oh, okay, it's
yeah,
broken. I don't know what to do. Yeah, which is that's the thing. Like, Emacs has this quality of helping you develop certain skills for life. And in a
mhm.
sense, it is a lifestyle. Of course, to somebody outside, this sounds really strange. Like, like it's just a text editor, mate. What are you talking about? Lifestyle choices and life lessons. Like, what is this? I just want
Yeah.
a text editor. I don't want a mentor, but of course, I think it is exactly that. It is exactly what you say. And you develop all these skills and all these instincts, let's call them, which is like, okay, something broke, therefore I will have to go check and fix it.
What
Uh,
what was the main lure for you? What was the thing that attracted you the most? Of not really like not really the features. Let's say, oh, I can write emails with this, right? What was the about the system itself, the thing that attracted you the most?
So I had a realization when I was developing my previous setup, which was Vim, Tmax, terminal emulators, and all the command line programs and terminal user interface programs, which was, look, I am trying to piece together a system out of these disparate programs. And what I am missing is a layer of integration to unify everything. Like, if I change my theme in Vim, for example, I also want it to change in Mat. I don't have to think about it. It should be one program, right? But it wouldn't happen. So what I realized is what I was trying to do is basically reinvent Emacs. So I was like, okay, since Emacs is an actual thing, let me just switch to Emacs and develop the skills for that. For me, the single most important promise, value proposition of Emacs was that with Emacs Lisp, you can draw linkages between the various things that you are doing. So it wasn't really org or email or whatever. Actually, org in particular, I think it took me like 2 years to get into it. But it was basically the idea that if you want, you can start piecing things together. And the way this works, for me, that's really wonderful, is that if you put in the effort to invest, then this is an investment that keeps giving. Because now you know how to integrate one tool with another. But if you bring a third tool, now you can integrate all three together, and then a fourth, and so on. And basically, the value keeps adding up. And for me, that's really nice.
How do you what I I remember hearing an interview, I think with I think a recent interview that you had on some podcast, I think.
Maybe it's the one on the Link Arzu channel. One word, Link Arzu. So
Yeah,
Christian's
might be.
channel. Yeah.
And I remember hearing that you said you used to play soccer a lot, right?
Yeah.
So that's a hobby. And if you if you had to relate Emacs to a hobby, like what kind of hobby do you think you would be most similar to?
Actually, I think it's very close to sport. Even
Mm,
though, of course, you can relate it to the more nerdy activities, which is totally fair. But I would say it's really close to sport for the reasons that you mentioned earlier, which is like it instills in you a certain ethos of self-reliance and of hard work paying off, which is common in sport. Not to say that it's exclusive to sport, right? But if I were to make that analogy, so I would say, yeah,
That's really
it's.
interesting. That's really interesting, and that's also true. So it's the discipline side of it.
Hmm.
Like if
Hmm.
you're disciplined, you will have a a a good time, right? It's going to be useful.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah,
And
but
just
to
to add
me,
to this, a little bit, like because I wasn't just playing soccer as a hobby, I was playing with the intent of becoming a professional, and I was a semi-pro. So I
Mhm.
would have signed the professional contract, but there was an untimely injury anyway. So when you are at that level, you don't just think in terms of, oh, it's a game, I'm having fun. You also think in terms of, okay, what kind of diet do I have to have? What is my
Yeah,
sleep cycle looking like? How disciplined I am in terms of not skipping training, not skipping the recovery and all that. So basically, you understand that you, as an athlete, are a system, and there are all these inputs. And so, how you piece together that system matters for the system to work. And so it's a little bit with Emacs and the configuration of Emacs. If you know what you are doing and you're not just copy pasting stuff into your init file, then you have something that you understand and you know how to debug, right? But if you are just randomly piecing things together, then it will break. Just like if you randomly piece work and life balance things together and
yeah.
lifestyle choices.
I think you are applying a very fundamental principle. So I think you can apply that principle pretty much everywhere. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's true. That's true. So.
to me, it's if I have to compare it to something, it's more probably towards painting,
Mm.
because I find that so if I want to paint and I want to paint something fast and dirty, I can do that, right?
Mhm, mhm,
But if I apply the rules slowly and I'm patient and and careful and all of that, and I study the color, and before setting up painting, I also prepare what the scheme of color is going to be. Then the result is much nicer, right?
Yeah, yeah. And now that, oh, now that you mentioned this, of course, that's fantastic. That's a wonderful insight. Because, of course, a painter who is experienced will, over time, develop their own tools, like their brushes. Like, for example, if you see Chinese watercolor
Mhm.
painting, you will notice that the brush has certain incisions to it to create the kind of flows they want to create. That's the kind of thing you learn through a lot of experience. But
Yeah,
it's let's simplify. It's a sharpened tool, right? Let's say it's a sharpened tool.
yeah,
Your the palette you use and like the mixtures you do. Like eventually you kind of consolidate on something, which again is this. You have the option of experimenting, but the option of sharpening your tools, as it were. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness, very
exactly.
nice.
Uh, and I think it also teaches you to work with, like, the thing of a good artist is that in general you don't need exceptional tools to
Mm,
do good art, right?
mhm.
So like my uncle, he went to art school,
Uh-huh.
and one time I asked him when I was very little for a drawing, but there was no pen, nothing. We were having coffee, and what he did, I don't remember what he used. I think he even used just the spoon. He took the spoon, put it in the coffee, and on a piece of tissue, he made like a watercolor thing of a
Uh,
flower. And I
oh,
was, so you're like,
wow.
yeah. And then I think of my hobbies when I go and overspend for the equipment. And I'm like, oh, man, maybe I could have saved that. And yeah, oh, I'm gonna learn to play guitar, and you go out and buy a super expensive guitar instead of a bad one to start with. So
Uh-huh,
yeah,
yeah, and of course that speaks to the artist's innate qualities, right? Which is like, well, I have the creativity, and basically it's a matter of my inventiveness to just express that creativity.
yeah, yeah, and as I said, I think that Winnie Max is almost like it gives me a calm, right?
Hmm.
Working in it, because I know that it's gonna take time to achieve something if I want to do something with Emacs. So now I'm looking at the GPTL stuff,
Hmm.
and I'm trying to go slow with it. Just read their thing, then study the things that I can apply with it, and just work slowly, because uh, it gives me a mind shift of, oh, you first have to go through this phase and learn and understand what's happening, and then you can apply it. um,
Uh-huh, uh-huh,
so yeah,
uh-huh.
and I think reading other people's code is very good for that as well, because
Yeah,
you're like yeah, you're literally reading other people logic, thought, right? That's
yeah,
what you're doing. That's you're learning something about someone, right? Like
correct.
in a very niche area of their personality, probably, but there's a whole person behind, but you're learning something of that person
Hmm.
from
Hmm.
reading their code. So yeah.
Yeah, and this speaks to the social slash cultural aspect of Emacs and of free
Mhm.
software in general, but specifically of Emacs, which is like, exactly, you have like the luxury, or the freedom, of course, but the luxury to read other people's thought processes in the form of the
Mhm.
code they have written, and also you kind of have the expectation that they will also have put in the work to write some good documentation as well. Like, how do I use this? What should I consider? What are the relevant workflows and all that? Like, for me, like, anecdotally, but I get the impression that I check some Git repository, and if it's an Emacs project, there is like a massive manual documenting everything. Then I check some other Linux related tool, and the README is like, yeah, hello world, and good luck with everything.
Yeah, exactly. I think that is very true. Like, the documentation in Emacs is super extensive. Like, I haven't read all of it, but you can find so much stuff, because not only you have the manuals, then you also have the code base that's well documented
Hmm.
in the doc strings of the functions and all of that. And in some way, when there are macros involved, then reading the code becomes also easier, because it becomes very expressive, let's say,
Hmm. Hmm.
in how it works. So it's almost like, in some cases, it's almost like reading language. So that you will just have some function that will say, oh, for example, the GPTL make tool. directory file path, and right, you give it a lambda with directory file path, and
Mm.
that's it. Like you're making a tool that, given a path, goes to the directory, right? So it's I don't know. I find it very much expressive. When you
Mhm.
work in other with other stuff, sometimes things with variable naming and things can get a bit out of hand, probably because it's it's more because of the writing top down everything, and instead in Lisp is more from inside out, right?
Yes.
So at least to me, in some cases, it can look more expressive and readable. Like I
Mhm.
can get in a glimpse, I can get a gist of what it's doing, right?
Mhm.
Instead, if
Mhm.
I have a long function like this, and to go.
Uh-huh. And since you mentioned macros, how is it in your experience, like the comparison? If you go from Lisp, where macros are, of course, first-class citizens, and if you go to some other language, how does it
Right.
feel, and how do you feel about Lisp macros, or eLisp,
I,
let's say, in this case?
so I tried writing some macros. I only made one that was actually useful. Uh, the one that I made that was actually useful is in a package I made for UV mode. That's like the dependency
Hmm.
thing. And what it does is just um, it will create the menus from transient. So it will create a transient menu section basically by
Okay.
just giving it strings. So instead of
Mm.
doing all the setup with I think it's like a list of three things for each parameter or something like that. It will just build everything. You just give it the strings of the parameters, and it will just build it for you, right?
Hmm.
Um, so I think it's pretty awesome that you can do that, and it gives you the main advantage is that it gives you a way of abstracting even higher than the bare code level, because what you end up doing is writing code that writes code, right? And I think that the fact that it becomes more expressive, let's say, it's just a byproduct of it. Because
Uh-huh. Hmm.
what you're really doing is just uh, defining this thing that writes a small piece of software of program, right, and give it a name, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so the more you can generalize of that code that you're writing, the more meaningful that name will be, right? The more
Yeah.
I don't know if I got my idea across.
No, no, I think you do, which is like because you are able to abstract away from the particularities of, let's say, a function call, and you are essentially templating. So
Mhm.
templating the template of the template, so the more you abstract away from it, eventually you distill it down to a name or a word or a concept, which is precise, and of course, it cannot be reduced further.
Yeah, exactly. I
Yeah.
think that's it. I mean, there's probably other upsides to the
Mm-hmm.
macros that
Mm-hmm.
elude me still,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe in some years I will grasp them. But to me, right now, that's the main thing. Like it's like templating, right? It's like templating.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is that from templating, like in other programming languages, it's probably easier to um, integrate in the code, right? Because if you have a template, you have to open the template file, then fill it in where it needs to be filled in. Instead, the macro just does all of that for you, right? So it's
Yeah.
part of the language. It's part of the syntax.
Yeah,
So
and then of course with all the data is code and code is data kind of thing of the Lisp languages, you still have the same syntax, so you don't have a different syntax to work with, and that looks really familiar. Like once you get used to it, it's like okay, yeah, it's more of the same.
yeah,
But for me, what I like is you can go and expand the macro. MXPP macro expand the last S expression. So something like do list, you can go and see what it is actually expanding into,
yeah,
right? And then it's a while loop, blah blah blah. And I'm like,
yeah, yeah,
this is so nice. Like because if you
yeah,
read the macro, maybe you're like, backticks, comma, what is this business? There is this at sign. I don't understand anything, right?
yeah.
And then you're like, but now I see the expanded form and everything starts to make sense.
Yeah, I did. At the beginning, I mean, even right now, yeah, I will get that wrong. The backtick
Uh-huh.
and all that, I will still get it wrong for sure. But it's so nice that once you have it, you can expand it. And again, that's something that if you have just a template, you would have to print all the template from whatever point in the program just to figure out, oh, what is going wrong here. Instead, in Emacs, you can just go to the expression, evaluate it, and that's it. That you have built in. Yeah, I think that's probably, yeah, that's part of the fact that it's it's a Lisp machine already. So it's so handy just being able to do that.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
And also it speaks to the heart of the tinkerer, which is like, well, you can keep exploring, you can keep
yeah.
checking out and learning. And once you learn that, well, it leads to the other and it never ends.
And from your different background, how does it feel like diving into these things?
So for me, it's really just a discovery process. It's like an adventure, and I'm having a lot of fun. So that's how I see it. It's like, of course, I don't mean to underestimate it, but it sounds like a toy to me. It's like I have a lot of fun. I'm playing with it, but of course, I'm actually
Mm,
doing work. I don't mean to say that I'm playing around, but it's the play in the sense of entertainment, or in the sense of triggering that part you have, which is more inquisitive and more.
yeah.
I want to explore and I want to figure things out, and then piece them together. It's that part of yourself. So it's not like, oh, this is so boring and I hate being here. So I enjoy doing it. And that contributes to basically exploring more and more and learning more. So that's how
Mm,
it is. And me, because my background is in the humanities mostly, so for me, it's really a new world. And I'm learning new things. And I'm like, yeah, this is wonderful. I'm like, always more to learn and be inspired by.
yeah. And do you? I think you have a pretty nice approach because I don't I feel sometimes like. Oh, I should have started sooner. Oh, I should have, I missed out on stuff and
Uh-huh.
something like that. But your approach is very much Zen, so
Yeah, yeah.
I really like it.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, I think I think in my case I started mainly exploring. Sometimes when I get tinkering, I will feel like, oh man, I got stuck here, and um, um, I will get this sort of feeling of, oh, I should have. This is because I'm lagging behind. This is
Hmm.
because I haven't learned enough, and it's, all these kind of feelings. But I think the best thing is in those cases is going to ask to the community, because the community is usually very very nice. Like
Yeah,
everybody is always so helpful and replies nicely. Um, and so I think what it teaches you that's also then useful when you work is that you can go ask people for things and help and figure things out together,
hmm,
which um, which is probably one of the best things that can come out from this. Yeah,
correct, correct. Plus, the kind of outlook you have is that, um, well, I don't need to beat myself up for not knowing this thing, but rather it's an opportunity for me to expand my knowledge and to become better at it.
yeah, and yeah, yeah. have you ever tried to like make make something how can I say
Hmm.
something professional, let's say, of out of what you're learning,
Hmm.
or
No.
are you doing this just because of mainly a hobby and mainly because you want to enjoy it?
Yeah, yeah. So it's mostly to enjoy it. It's really that. I don't have any idea of making something professional, and I haven't even thought about it. And to me, it's like part of the magic is that it is like this, and it's fun. Not to say that, of course, it doesn't have other uses, but this is what inspires me, and I keep going because I think when you add considerations that are of a business kind into something that you enjoy, chances are that you won't enjoy it anymore because the business has its own logic, which is of course cutthroat and very very demanding. And of course that's how a business is supposed to be run, but then you cannot have like that emotional attachment to what you are doing. You have to be a business person, and of course if you don't want then that's you shouldn't go there.
And so, would you say, because of what we said before, so if you're doing this only out of passion, with the discipline of the a fundamental discipline, would you then say that it's almost like when you write these things, it's almost like making something like art or something like this?
Yeah, yeah. I think fundamentally, when you distill it, of course, as you said, with art and with sport and with Zen, because you mentioned Zen, of course. So with spirituality, let's say, like once you distill it, of course, we come down to the same core, right? Which is like, what is your way of living, and what is it that you are doing here, which you consider as your value, that which you wouldn't want to make a discount on. That's what you wouldn't want to sacrifice or instrumentalize in the service of some other goal, such as profit or whatnot. So yeah, I could then describe it as art in the sense of the sincere expression that springs from within, or as a sport in the sense again of an expression that comes from within rather than being forced to do it, right? Like being thrown in a pit of lions, for example. That's not sport to me, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because
Yeah.
yeah, exactly, because you're expressing yourself in logic, let's say,
Mm.
but without restraint, because it's out of uh, uh, without the need of any elicitation, external elicitation, right?
Yeah.
So you just do it, right? Yeah.
And in that, there is a process of self discovery, which is what I generally do with all my publications, but it applies to Emacs as well, which is like I have this, of course, you mentioned art, so you know this, alla prima method, which is like I will just do it in one go and whatever happens. And if it's good, fine. If it's not good, again, fine, because I learned something about myself. But the point is that by doing it in the most sincere way I can, I have a snapshot of my current self, and then looking back at it, I can understand myself better and grow that way.
And did you like?
Sorry, sorry, just to say,
No,
give me
no, it's
one
fine.
second to open the door because the dogs are here and they are all
Yeah,
animated.
yeah,
One second,
no
one second.
problem.
So yeah, we'll need to get going soon. Let's finish on this, and we'll need
Yeah.
to get going soon because the
Oh,
dogs are here.
well, my question was, did you like did you have an aha moment for this,
Hmm.
like, because um it, it feels like you were in a very much different type of uh, life trajectory, right? And then it switched like this. Did you have an aha moment or something like that?
So the way it happened, of course, it's a long story, but the shortened version is that originally I had this alla prima approach without even realizing it. It had come about organically. Then, because of my career, I had to be more careful with the writing and everything. So I went into overthinking mode, where it was like, okay, I have to write an email. It's like this, like one paragraph, and I have to spend 45 minutes on it to make sure it's perfect.
Mm,
So I went into overthinking mode, and then looking back at that and how harmful it actually was to me, I switched again to this more spontaneous and organic approach. And over time, I was more self-conscious, self-aware of that. But it was a kernel of it was there from very early on.
all
And
right.
where it became apparent that I need to have this method was when I wanted to practice my language skills. Because, like, I'm talking to you now, I don't have the option to cut out all the parts that are incorrect grammar, right? So
Mm,
my skills, if I am speaking to you right now, will be a true reflection of what I have. So what
yeah,
I have right now is a true reflection of my skills. And
yeah.
for me, then, it makes no sense to, let's say, do a video where I cut out all the parts that are awkward or all the parts that are wrong, because then I am not practicing that skill. So when the real life happens, I won't be ready for it. So for me, it was like, of course, it's nice for self-discovery, but it's also nice practically because that's kind of the drill, if I relate it to sport again. That's what the training requires. You have to do it the
Mm,
right way, otherwise you won't be able to do it on match day.
yeah, all right. So yeah, I think it's pretty nice.
Uh-huh.
I think it's then a pretty good turn of events for you,
Uh-huh.
because you
Uh-huh.
turned something that you like doing, but you were doing against, not against your will, but you were doing it in a restricted, confined way, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you
Mm-hmm.
turned it now into something that you can do openly without any restrictions.
Yeah, yeah, and to connect it to what you said, the word Zen, which of course I don't want to say it's Zen, but I would say it as lightness, calmness, and the sense of effortlessness, even though it's not effortless. But I would say those qualities, which is like when you are in the flow of just doing your thing, it feels as if there is no burden at all. Like I am just myself and it just flows.
Yeah, that's very, yeah. I'm trying to work towards that way.
Uh-huh.
It's not easy. I don't know if it's a cultural thing,
Uh-huh.
um, because I since I moved back here, I know these people are very much more agitated here. They're much
Ah,
more, stressed, and a lot of people talk about the dolce far niente
what
myth,
does that
which is,
mean?
it's the sweetheart of doing nothing or something like that, right? Dolce far
Uh-huh.
niente,
Okay,
sweet
okay.
doing nothing or
I
something
know
like
the
that.
Dolce Vita, of course.
Yeah, but no, this is dolce far niente, which
Uh,
is like, uh,
far niente. Okay, okay, it's three words.
uh,
Okay,
and
okay.
but uh, I see more of a stressful situation. People seem stressed, and I've been trying to get to like a calmer path and all,
Mm-hmm,
but
mm-hmm.
I think it can be difficult, like the system, how everything revolves around, and it makes it difficult because you always have something to do. There's something next to do, and then something else to catch, and and so
Yeah,
it
yeah.
becomes yeah, becomes challenging. Let's say.
Yeah, I have a thought on this because I have the impression. So in Greece, when I was growing up there, I had the impression that people were really calm about life and easygoing with themselves. And then there was this post 2008 financial crisis, which of course hit all of the European South heavily, and of course other parts, but as heavily. And I got the sense that the Greeks, and maybe Italians and others as well, they became apologetic about their culture and their lifestyle. And well, basically, you would go abroad and you would try not to identify as a Greek, which for me is kind of difficult. Like, I cannot blend in with, I don't know, the blonde people in
Mm,
Sweden, right? So,
mm.
so
You mean because there's an expectation
there is a certain stigma.
that you're
Yeah.
going to be lazy, let's say, or something like that.
It's exactly that. So it's like, oh, you are
I got
Italian, so dolce vita, you never work, you just drink espresso,
uh,
eat pizza, and have a good life. And
I got some of in my case, I always had the impression since I was little that people were stressed. Maybe it's
okay,
the
okay,
environment I was in.
okay,
I don't
okay,
know, but I
maybe,
always
maybe.
grew up with this fight or flight mode turned on.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's the environment I grew up in.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know.
maybe it's the
But I always had the
specifics.
impression that people were quite stressed. But I also had somewhat of that impression. And although I see even in my friends, etc., like people work here people work until late, like it,
Yeah.
they will stay at the office or at the computer until late. um, so there's very much a almost like a Stakhanovist mindset,
Mm-hmm.
which I think collides with some of those stereotypes very
Yeah, yeah, of
much.
course, of course, of course.
So I don't know what analysis to make out of it. But in general, I always had the sense that people here work very hard, and probably it's because it's also a tourist destination that then, then people when they go there they're on vacation mode, and so they think that also people living there are on vacation mode.
It's exactly
When
that.
it's really not the case. But yeah.
It's exactly that. Like, you go to some beach or some fancy picturesque village and you're like, oh, you guys live such a nice life. Whereas I will go back to England where it's 17 degrees all year round and it's always dark, and I hate it. But here you have basically the perfect, the paradise on earth. Yeah, and of course, if you are there for 2 weeks, it's paradise on earth. If you are there your whole life,
Yeah, there's upsides and downsides. I came back here mainly to be close to my family. So and that's because during the COVID years, the first years, uh, my family had it quite rough. And then after that, I got very sick and ended up in the hospital, and it was really bad. And so after that, I had this kind of realization, like the I don't know, I had kind of a mind shift in my priorities. I want to
mm-hmm.
be closer to my first degree connections, let's say, because that taught me that a lot can happen in very short time. And so it kind of shifted my whole life perspective. Let's say it was very much a wake up call.
Mm-hmm.
Whether I would have grown into it anyways, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But it surely did kick the accelerator on it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah. In the end, I think there's and coming back here, I'm aware of all the fallacies, because the fallacies are what made me go away, right? What made me move abroad.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but also being close to lose people and cause loss made me realize that um, if you are lucky enough to have uh, first degree network that's close, and and um, and people love each other, uh, then you can try to make that your priority, and maybe that can outweigh the fallacies that are around. And
Yeah.
you can also work into making the place better,
Yeah.
uh, because I think that another downside of this is that it's very easy now to say, I don't like it here, I'm going to go away, right?
Hmm.
I'm going to
Hmm.
move somewhere else. And instead, it's harder to say, I want to stay here. But if you stay here, you can also work on trying to make things better as much as you can, even with
Yeah.
smaller things, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, if the government is not going to do it, at least, we can try and make something, at least in these 2 blocks, in this neighborhood, work, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And ultimately, if you think of the 2 blocks or the neighborhood or the village, etc., like what is a village? What is a block? What is it if not the people living there? Like, of course, the government should take care of stuff. Like here, for example, we need the government to provide the airplanes for the wildfires, right? But this doesn't mean that we people in the village are just twiddling our thumbs and are waiting for some bureaucrat to tell us how to organize our life. So, of course, you want to cultivate that sense of community, which also connects to what we were saying about Emacs, right? So, there is this community, and the community empowers you. And of course, in the case of your relatives or extended family, this community is not just people who are co-located, it's people who are actually relatives and have this natural affinity for each other. So it's
Yeah.
a really, really strong bond. And I think we have this idea in our world that unless me as an individual I am capable of doing everything, then I am not good enough. And we have this imposter syndrome for everything kind of thing. Whereas when you are a member of a community, you don't need to be good at everything. You just need to do your part in contributing to social reproduction so that the community can regenerate itself, new members can come in, old members are taken care of, that sort of thing. And I think this is the lightness again at the social level, where you know that you are not in a precarious spot. You know that your relative will help you if, for example, let's give an example here, like the roof breaks and there are
Yeah.
relatives all around. Well, the next morning, all the relatives will be here to fix the roof. Of course, this doesn't actually happen to my case, but if there was a community, right? Like the next day, the relatives will all be here mending the roof. There is no question about that. But if you
Yeah.
are in the middle of nowhere, a stranger among strangers, it's ever more difficult, and you are always stressed because it's like one small tweak and basically my whole world collapses. It's so fragile.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty nice insight. I didn't think about that point of view, that like if you're in your close first degree network, you also don't have to worry about that imposter kind of thing. You can just be yourself,
Hmm.
and maybe if you're the nicest version of yourself, it's gonna work quite well for everybody else as well. Right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
that's
yeah.
yeah. I didn't think about that.
And
That's
another thing with relatives and also close friends is that you can also not be a pretender, because of course imposter is the one extreme and pretender is the other extreme. Like online, you can be, for example, let's say a macho man, and you can have this persona where you always talk angry and you pump your chest, and of course online you can do that, nobody knows you, and basically you are, King Kong. But in reality, you are not that. Online, you can do it, but in reality, if you do that to your friends, they will laugh at you. If you do that to your mother,
yeah. Exactly.
she will grab
Yeah,
you by the ear and be like, "What happened to you?"
yeah, exactly. You would get checked pretty quickly. Yeah.
Very good, very good. I say we call it a day because the dogs are there. They are
Yeah,
playing with
sure.
each other, but they want to go for a walk.
All right, perfect. So we can call it a call, I guess.
Yes, yes, yes. Very well. Thank you for the time. Thank you for the chat today. I had a good time and
No,
I learned a
thank
lot.
you very much. Really enjoyed it. So thanks a lot.
And I will link to your actually your YouTube, but any other links you want me, send them to me and I will add them in the description.
Oh, I think the YouTube is fine.
Okay.
It's okay. Thanks. All right. Perfect.
Very
Thanks.
well, very well.
Have a nice walk and
Thank you,
enjoy the
thank
weather.
you, thank you
See
very
ya.
much. Take care, take care. Goodbye, goodbye.
See ya.
Bye bye. So take care, folks, and I'm stopping the recording. Bye bye from my side.